NATO just sent troops to the Arctic to defend against America. Not Russia, not China. Their own ally, their own founder. January 2026. Something is happening that no one thought possible. The American president wants Greenland, and he's not asking nicely. When reporters asked how far he'd go to take it, he gave a chilling answer. You'll find out. Those 3 words sent shockwaves across Europe. Within days, French troops flew north. German soldiers mobilized for Arctic conditions. Danish elite forces prepared to defend their own soil. But here's what most people don't understand. This isn't about ice or snow. Something is buried beneath Greenland, worth trillions of dollars. Something powerful enough to make a president threaten his own allies. And now, the alliance that held the West together for 77 years is cracking from the inside. This is Operation Arctic Endurance, the story behind the shocking deployment, the secret reasons driving this crisis, and the question no one wants to ask. Can NATO survive when the threat comes from within? Stay with me, because what you're about to learn will change how you see everything. To truly understand this crisis, we must travel back 77 years. April 4th, 1949. 12 nations gather in Washington, D.C. and sign a historic treaty. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization is born. One purpose, one promise: collective defense against any threat from outside. The idea was simple but powerful. An attack on one is an attack on all. Article 5, the sacred commitment. For nearly 8 decades, that promise held. No member ever dreamed of threatening another. The United States became NATO's military giant, spending more on defense than all other members combined. European security rested on American protection, and together, they won the Cold War without firing a single shot. For generations, NATO was a guarantee. Sleep well. America is watching over you. European children grew up under that umbrella, never once questioning whether it would hold. But here's what history teaches us. Alliances built on trust can shatter in an instant. When the protector becomes the threat, everything crumbles. And in 2026, that's exactly what began. NATO was designed to last forever. But just 2 years after its founding, America built something else on Arctic ice. A military base that would become the center of this entire crisis. While NATO was finding its feet, something else was taking shape in the frozen north. 1950. Deep inside Greenland's icy wilderness, Denmark creates the Serious Dog Sled Patrol, a legendary naval unit tasked with patrolling vast empty territory year-round in temperatures that drop below -50 degrees Celsius. These soldiers travel up to 4,000 kilometers every year, completely alone, no backup, no rescue teams nearby, living off the frozen land, defending sovereignty with their lives, through polar darkness and conditions that can kill in minutes. Then came 1951. The United States and Denmark sign a defense agreement. America gains the right to build military bases on Greenland. Thule Air Base rises from the ice, now called Patuxent Space Base, the northernmost U.S. military installation on the planet. For 75 years, this arrangement worked perfectly. America got missile warning systems, protecting the homeland from Russian attacks. Denmark got security guarantees, backed by a superpower. Both sides benefited. Neither asked for more. The base became essential for NORAD operations, early warning against nuclear missiles, space surveillance, missile defense. America's Arctic fortress, built on borrowed land. For decades, access was enough. America operated freely under the 1951 agreement. But in 2019, someone decided that access wasn't sufficient. He didn't want to borrow anymore. He wanted to own it. The first warning came years before the crisis. August 2019. President Donald Trump makes a surprising announcement. He wants to purchase Greenland. The world laughs, assuming it's a joke. Denmark's prime minister calls the idea absurd. Greenland's government rejects it immediately. Late-night comedians can't believe their luck. A real estate mogul trying to buy an entire country. But here are the facts. Greenland is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. 56,000 people call it home, mostly indigenous Inuit communities. They have said no to American control over and over again. Their homeland is not for sale. Most presidents would drop an idea after being mocked like this. But Trump doesn't forget. He cancels a planned state visit to Denmark out of pure retaliation. The headlines fade. The dispute goes quiet. But inside Trump's mind, Greenland never disappears. Then comes November 2020. Trump loses the election. 4 years pass. Legal troubles pile up. But through all of it, Greenland stays on his mind, waiting for another chance. And in November 2024, that chance arrives. Trump wins again. The joke suddenly becomes policy. The request turns into a demand. And this time, the demand comes with a threat. Before we move forward in time, we need to stop and understand something. Why does Greenland matter so much? Why is a frozen island obsessing the most powerful man on Earth? The answer lies beneath the ice and on the map. Greenland covers 2.166 million square kilometers. That's 3 times the size of Texas. Most people look at it and see empty ice. But strategic planners see something else: the future of global power. Here's what's hidden under that ice. Natural resources worth between $2 trillion and $4 trillion. 17.5 billion barrels of offshore crude oil. 4.19 trillion cubic meters of natural gas. And 1.5 million metric tons of rare earth elements. Second only to China. Now think about what rare earths do. They power electric vehicles. They run military systems. They build advanced technology. China controls most of the world's supply right now. Greenland could break that monopoly. Whoever controls Greenland controls 21st century technology. But there's more. Climate change is melting Arctic ice, opening new shipping routes. Routes that could cut global shipping distances by 30 to 50%. And Greenland sits right at the gateway. Trillions in future trade, controlled by whoever holds the island. Resources, shipping lanes, rare earths, and don't forget, Patuxent Space Base, America's eyes in the Arctic. Now you understand why Trump wants it. And in January 2026, he finally made his move. The European response came before Trump even took office. January 15th, 2026, 5 days before the inauguration. European NATO members did something the world had never seen. They deployed military forces directly to Greenland. This wasn't a routine training exercise. This was Europe sending soldiers to defend a member's sovereignty against potential aggression from another member. In 77 years of NATO history, nothing like this had ever happened. France sent 15 military personnel, the largest group. Germany deployed 13 troops. Sweden contributed 3. Finland and Norway each sent 2. The United Kingdom and Netherlands added more forces. These numbers sound small, but the symbolism was massive. Multiple European nations sending soldiers to protect against America. The world had never witnessed anything like it. And here's the key detail. The deployment stayed outside official NATO command structures. Why? To avoid a direct clash with the United States, NATO's most powerful member. Europe was defending NATO's core values, while carefully avoiding war within the alliance itself. Operation Arctic Endurance had officially begun. Europe made the first move, but 3 days later, Trump responded. Not with soldiers, with economic warfare. Europe made its move. Now Trump made his. January 18th, 2026, 2 days before his inauguration, Trump announces punitive tariffs. 10% on imports from every nation that sent troops to Greenland. Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, Netherlands, Finland, United Kingdom, 8 countries targeted at the same time. Economic punishment for defending sovereignty. The tariffs were set to begin February 1st, 2026, and Trump made the purpose crystal clear. They would stay in place until the US is able to purchase Greenland. No hiding, no diplomacy, economic coercion, stated openly to the world. Think of it this way: your neighbor threatens to destroy your business unless you hand over your property. That's blackmail, and that's exactly what Trump did to America's closest allies. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen fired back. Europe won't be blackmailed, but the threat was real. Billions of dollars in trade, suddenly hanging by a thread. 1 day later, Denmark made their next move. 200 elite soldiers preparing to deploy. Europe made a statement. Now Denmark made it louder. January 19th, 2026, 1 day before Trump's inauguration, Denmark sends reinforcements to Greenland. 200 elite combat soldiers arriving on Arctic soil. Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen called it a substantial contribution, not a quick show of force, a commitment to a more permanent military presence. Denmark was digging in. The numbers tell the real story. $13.7 billion committed to Arctic security over multiple years. New F-35 fighter jets built to operate in extreme cold. Enhanced surveillance systems covering Greenland's massive territory. Expanded naval presence. New Arctic warfare training facilities. Denmark's entire defense posture was being restructured. Not because of Russia, not because of China, because of Washington. Their own NATO ally had become their greatest threat. Minister Poulsen announced troop deployments for 2026 and beyond. He called it a long-term mission. Denmark wasn't hoping this crisis would just blow over. They were preparing for years of tension. Europe had deployed. Denmark had reinforced. Tariffs were announced. Lines were drawn. Now, the whole world waited for one moment. January 20th, 2026. And whatever Trump was about to say, the day everyone was watching had finally arrived. January 20th, 2026. Donald Trump raises his hand and takes the oath of office. His second term officially begins. Within hours, a press briefing shocks all of Europe. A reporter asks the question everyone fears. How far would you go to seize Greenland? Would you use military force? The room goes silent. Trump's answer, just 3 words. You'll find out. No explanation, no clarification. The President of the United States refusing to rule out military action against a NATO ally's sovereign territory. Think about what that means. Imagine asking your security guard, "Will you rob me?" He smiles and says, "You'll find out." That's not reassurance. That's a threat. European leaders had been hoping the demands were just bluster, negotiating tricks, political theater. Those 3 words killed that hope. The American president had just threatened invasion. January 15th, Europe deployed. January 18th, tariffs announced. January 19th, Denmark reinforced. January 20th, Trump refused to rule out force. 4 days that shook the Western alliance to its core. Late January 2026. The crisis shows no signs of ending. European forces remain stationed in Greenland, and NATO faces an impossible contradiction. For 77 years, NATO meant one thing: protection. American troops in Europe. American bases across the continent. The shield that kept the peace. But now, that shield has become a threat. Here's the reality. The United States is NATO's dominant military power. European security has depended on American protection for generations. But suddenly, that protection comes with conditions. Surrender your territory or face the consequences. Think about it this way. A security guard protects your building for years. One day, if this revealed a crisis you didn't know about, subscribe. Can NATO survive this? Drop your answer below.